Today we're going to read about one of the largest earthquakes in Alaska. I'm going to take some notes for you because today you're going to also write down some important facts that you have learned from this article as well. So this earthquake and ensuing tsunami took 131 lives. 131 people died as a result of this tsunami and earthquake. And it tells you the numbers: 122 from the tsunami and 9 from the earthquake. And remembering that the tsunami is that large wave that results from the ocean wave because of the earthquake activity. Another thing, it caused $2.3 billion in property loss. I mean, so many properties and towns and businesses were damaged because of the earthquake that it cost $2.3 billion, okay, to fix. So these are some of the names of these towns that were affected: Anchorage, Chitnia, Glenhan, Homer, Hope, Castleoff, Kenai. So these are a lot of the many towns that were affected by this earthquake. Let's take a look at some more info here. Let's see. Anchorage, right? So this is our, one of the largest cities there, about 120 kilometers northwest of the epicenter, sustained the most severe damage to property. So this is a fact you could write down. Anchorage had the most damage to their property, even though it was 120 kilometers northwest of the epicenter. So here it's showing us this picture. The star is the epicenter, which means where the earthquake started, and northwest, right? So that's where we're talking here. So Anchorage is all the way over here, and it had the most damage, which is interesting. Let's continue to read about this. About 30 blocks of dwellings and commercial buildings were damaged or destroyed in Anchorage. 30 blocks worth of area was damaged in Anchorage. I mean, there's 8 blocks, right, in a mile. Woodbury is 2.3 mile radius of a town, right? So that's about the same size. So the whole area was destroyed, about 30 blocks of it. So talking J.C. Penney was damaged, the Four Seasons, a 6-story structure collapsed. So a 6-story building with 6 floors, the whole thing collapsed. The schools in Anchorage were almost devastated. This is another fact you can write down, right? The Government Hill Grade School was sitting astride a huge landslide, was almost a total loss. Anchorage High School and Denali Grade School were damaged severely. Duration of the shock was 3 minutes. So it lasted 3 minutes long, this earthquake, the shocks. Think about it. You have 3 minutes to get from one class to the next. Landslides in Anchorage caused heavy damage. Okay, so a landslide, we'll talk about that, right? So think of hills. We all know what mud is, so huge hills of area. So think of all that water coming through, affecting the hill, the dirt, so that all the dirt slides down these huge hills. So huge slides occurred in downtown business section at Government Hill and at Turnagain Heights. The largest and most devastating landslide occurred at Turnagain Heights. An area of about 130 acres was devastated by displacements that broke the ground into many deranged blocks that were collapsed and tilted at all angles. This slide destroyed 175 private houses. So 175 houses were destroyed, right, because of this landslide. Water mains and gas, sewer, telephone, electric systems were disrupted throughout the area. So imagine these 75 houses were destroyed, and then other areas had no water, gas, sewer, telephone, can't use electricity. All of these things were affected. The earthquake was accompanied by vertical displacement over an area of about 520,000 square kilometers. The major area of uplift trended northeast from southern Kodiak Island to Prince William Sound. and trended east-west to the east of the sound. Vertical displacements range from about 11.5 meters of uplift to 2.3 meters of subsidence relative to sea level. I'm going to explain what this means in a minute. Off the southwest end of Montauk Island, there was absolute vertical displacement of about 13 to 15 meters. Uplift also occurred along the extreme southeast coast of Kodiak Island and all over part of Sitniak Island. This zone of subsidence covered about 285,000 square kilometers, including the north and west parts of Prince William Sound, the west part of the Chunkunga Mountains, and most of Kenai Peninsula, and almost all of the Kodiak Island group. So let's talk about what they mean by vertical displacement. So vertical, right, means up and down. Displacement means water that's no longer in use, right? If it's displaced, meaning it has nowhere to go. So they're saying basically there was a very large areas, right, all over Alaska that the earthquake, the water that was coming in, the earthquake had all of this water that had nowhere to go. Okay. This shock generated a tsunami that devastated many towns along the Gulf of Alaska and left serious damage at Alberni and Port Alberni, Canada, along the west coast of the United States. 15 people were killed in Hawaii. So that tsunami also caused a lot of damage, okay? 15 people died in that tsunami. The maximum wave height was 67 meters. Seek action in rivers, lakes, bayous, and protected harbors and waterways along the Gulf Coast of Louisiana and Texas caused minor damage. It was also recorded on tide gauges in Cuba and Puerto Rico. So even though Alaska is quite far, right, from these various areas that they're mentioning, like Louisiana, Texas, right? They're far away and they could still feel and had damage to their waterways, including Cuba and Puerto Rico, which again are quite far from Alaska. The earthquake was felt over an area of Alaska and in parts of Western Yukon Territory and British Columbia, Canada. So even certain parts of Canada could feel the effects of the earthquake of 1964 that occurred in Alaska. So your job today will be to write down a certain amount of facts